On the night of November 9th, 1984, the Boston Garden carried a different kind of energy. The air was heavier, the tension sharper, and every bounce of the ball echoed like a challenge. This wasn't just a regular season game between two Eastern Conference powers. It was a collision between legacies, egos, and reputations. The Philadelphia 76ers arrived with star power in every direction. Julius Irving, the face of basketball elegance, was still commanding attention at age 34. Moses Malone, already a three-time MVP, brought his usual dominance inside, and now they had added a fresh spark in Charles Barkley, a rookie built like a linebacker with a motor that never stopped running. Together they were loud, they were confident, and they believed the East still belonged to them. But across from them stood a man who didn't need to say much. Larry Bird didn't talk trash to stir the pot. He did it because he already knew what was coming. With Kevin McHale sidelined, the Celtics were supposed to be a little lighter in firepower, maybe even a step slower in the post. But Larry didn't see a disadvantage. He saw a stage. This was a game where tempers would boil and history would add another chapter. Not through brawls or buzzer beaters, but through a statement that couldn't be ignored. Larry Bird wasn't just playing to win. He was playing to remind the world who really dictated the pace in the East. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the story wasn't about the Sixers star trio. It was about one man who played with more fire, more precision, and more control than anyone else on the floor. This is the night Larry Bird showed Moses Malone, Charles Barkley, and Julius Irving who was in charge. The game opened with both teams playing with purpose and physicality, each possession contested as if it were the last. Boston struck first with a sequence that reflected their discipline and unselfishness. Robert Parrish established deep position against Moses Malone in the post, holding his ground as the defense braced for a shot. Rather than forcing a contested look, Parrish read the floor and spotted Dennis Johnson wide open on the opposite wing. With a quick pass out of the double team, DJ stepped into his rhythm and buried the jumper, a textbook example of how Boston's inside-out ball movement could dismantle even the most physical defenses. Moments later, Johnson made another impact play, this time in transition. Pulling down a defensive rebound, he pushed the ball up the court before Philadelphia could get set. Larry Bird, reading the defense perfectly, slipped behind the last line of resistance and positioned himself under the rim. Johnson threaded the pass through, and Bird absorbed contact as he finished the layup. Stepping to the free throw line, he completed the three-point play without a hint of hesitation. Philadelphia refused to let Boston dictate the flow early. Moses Malone, one of the most physically dominant forces of his era, went to work on the low block. Backing down Parrish with his wide frame and unmatched strength, he spun into a step-through move and finished at the rim with authority. Plays like that were a reminder that even Boston's disciplined interior defense could be bent by Malone's sheer power and touch. The crowd roared minutes later when Bird found himself matched up against Julius Irving in the post. With the gym buzzing in anticipation, Bird planted his foot, spun off Irving's hip, and elevated for a reverse dunk along the baseline. It was more than just 2 points. It was a statement to the Sixers and to the fans that Bird intended to take over the night. Boston continued to run their sets with precision, and on an out-of-bounds play, Bird was the inbounder. After getting the ball in, he curled sharply around a screen, catching the return pass in stride and draining the jumper in one smooth motion. It was the type of move-and-shoot sequence that had become a staple of his game. As the quarter progressed, Charles Barkley began imposing his presence. Backing down Kevin McHale, he pivoted into the lane and dropped in a fadeaway jumper over Boston's long-arm defender. On the next trip, McHale sagged off just enough for Barkley to rise up and knock down a long two from the top of the key. Bird responded almost immediately, initiating a give and go with McHale on the wing. After making the pass, he cut decisively to the basket, received it back, and laid it in. To cap the period, the Celtics ran their familiar floppy action, with Bird curling off a Parrish screen to the short corner and hitting the jumper in rhythm. The execution was flawless, yet despite Boston's precision, Philadelphia held a narrow 32-30 lead at the end of the first quarter. The second quarter began with Philadelphia looking to cut into Boston's narrow lead, and they wasted no time attacking. Leon Wood brought the ball up against Quinn Buckner and used a quick first step to get by him with ease. As the defense scrambled to recover, Wood drove straight into the lane and spotted Charles Barkley cutting hard toward the rim. Without hesitation, Wood fed him a perfect pass in stride, and Barkley rose up with authority, delivering a thunderous two-handed tomahawk slam that made the Sixers bench come alive. Seeing that Boston was struggling to slow Barkley down inside, Philadelphia went right back to him in the half court. This time, Julius Irving operated from the perimeter and looked to create for his teammate. Dr. J delivered the entry pass to Barkley in the low post, and with Kevin McHale bodying him up, Barkley spun sharply toward the middle, using his combination of power and agility to create space. He elevated smoothly and banked in the shot off the glass, cutting further into the deficit and forcing Boston to tighten up their interior defense. The Sixers continued to find rhythm in their offense, and soon it was Irving's turn to score. Positioned on the right wing, he caught a swing pass as his defender scrambled to close out. Irving wasted no time rising into his jumper, and with that signature smooth release, he dropped the shot clean through the net. The Sixers had their offense clicking, but Boston, as they had done countless times before, responded with poise. The Celtics went to their leader. Larry Bird caught the ball deep in the low post, and his defender made the mistake of gambling from behind, reaching in to try to poke the ball free. Bird secured it firmly, pivoted without rushing, and took the ball straight to the rim for a high percentage finish. It was the perfect example of how Bird punished even the smallest defensive lapse. Moments later, Danny Ainge pushed the ball in transition after a defensive rebound. He spotted Bird already stationed in the right corner, just inside the three-point line, set and ready. Ainge's pass hit him perfectly, and without a moment's hesitation, Bird rose up and buried the jumper with complete confidence. The offensive showcase continued as Boston again went to Bird in the low block. This time, he worked one-on-one against Irving, turning to his left hand for a soft jumper over the contest. The ball splashed through, and the whistle blew for a foul on Dr. J. Bird, never rattled at the free throw line, calmly converted the and one, extending Boston's lead. Before the quarter closed, Bird struck again. Coming off a crisp pin-down screen on the right side, he curled into the open space, caught the ball in perfect rhythm, and knocked down another mid-range jumper. The execution from Boston was as sharp as ever, and their leader was in complete command. By the end of the first half, the Celtics had not only weathered Philadelphia's push, but had also built a firm cushion. Their disciplined ball movement, efficient shot selection, and Bird's all-around dominance sent them into the locker room with a 62-51 lead, fully in control of the game's pace and flow. The third quarter opened with Boston looking to extend their momentum, and once again it was Larry Bird at the center of everything. The Celtics ran him off an away screen on the left side, but instead of curling to the middle, Bird faded to the corner. With just enough space to gather and release, he elevated and knocked down a long two with a kind of effortless stroke that had become routine. A few possessions later, Bird showed off his awareness and deceptive movement. Selling the idea that he was going to use another screen, he instead cut back door. Danny Ainge saw it developing the entire way and fired a pass under the rim where Bird caught it in stride and finished with an easy layup. The Sixers scrambled to adjust, but Bird remained one step ahead. In transition, he filled the lane on the left wing, and as he caught the ball in motion, he took a single dribble to retreat behind the three-point line in the corner. Rising up in rhythm, he drilled the shot, pushing Boston's lead further and continuing his individual scoring assault. Philadelphia answered with a bit of hustle of their own. Maurice Cheeks grabbed a loose ball near half court and immediately pushed the pace. Spotting Barkley ahead of the defense under the rim, Cheeks delivered the pass, and Barkley converted the easy bucket. Barkley stayed aggressive on the next trip, attacking along the baseline with Bird guarding him one-on-one. As Barkley elevated at the rim, Bird reached in and managed to get a hand on the ball, but the whistle blew for a foul. Barkley stepped to the line and converted one of two. Boston didn't allow the Sixers to sustain any momentum. On the following possession, Ainge once again found Bird, this time sprinting down the right lane in transition. Bird set his feet just inside the short corner, received the bounce pass, and knocked down the jumper with his usual poise. Philadelphia's next answer came from Julius Irving. After slipping free on a cut to the rim, he took a pass from Malone and finished off the glass through contact. Though he missed the free throw, it was one of the few moments of clean execution the Sixers managed during the quarter. Then came perhaps the most dazzling play of the night. Following a made Philadelphia free throw, Bird didn't wait for the ball to bounce or slow the game down. He grabbed it immediately beneath the basket, turned, and threw a full court pass to ML Carr, sprinting down the opposite end. The pass was on the money, and Carr flushed it with a two-handed dunk that brought the Boston crowd to its feet. But the excitement quickly turned into chaos. The intensity between Bird and Irving, which had been simmering throughout the game, finally boiled over. After some physical exchanges, a hard elbow escalated into a full-blown fight. Players from both sides rushed in and the scene turned into a melee. The referee stepped in to restore order, but the damage was done. Both Bird and Irving were ejected from the game. Bird left with 42 points already on the board. A brilliant performance cut short. Despite the emotional swing, Boston maintained their composure. Kevin McHale stepped up as the quarter wound down. With the shot clock expiring, he cut to the elbow, rose up with a hand in his face, and knocked down a tough, contested jumper to close the quarter strong. When the dust settled and the horn sounded, Boston had taken a commanding 98-79 lead, weathering the chaos and continuing to dominate on both ends of the floor. The final quarter began with Philadelphia looking to mount a comeback, and they immediately went to the most reliable option on the floor, Moses Malone. Working from the low post against Robert Parrish, Malone used a textbook shot fake to get Parrish off balance. As soon as Parrish left his feet, Moses calmly rose and sank the jumper over the outstretched arms of the Celtics center. It was a veteran move by one of the most consistent low post scorers in NBA history. The Sixers continued to feed him, and once again Maurice Cheeks delivered the ball to Malone deep in the post. This time, the Celtics collapsed on him quickly, sending a triple team to try and smother the possession. But Malone didn't panic. He pivoted over his right shoulder and threw up a soft turnaround jumper that bounced on the rim before dropping in with a favorable roll. His footwork, strength, and balance were on full display, and despite the pressure, he kept the Sixers within striking distance. Philadelphia's next scoring opportunity came from an even tougher spot. Malone found himself with the ball on the right wing, far from his usual comfort zone on the block. Guarded tightly by Dennis Johnson, he took a single dribble to his right and elevated for a high arcing jumper. The shot sailed over the contest and dropped through cleanly, showing Malone's full scoring range and confidence late in the game. Boston, however, never allowed the Sixers to gain too much momentum. Dennis Johnson responded with a steady play of his own. Catching the ball in the left corner, he took one dribble to his right to sidestep the defender and released a mid-range jumper that found the bottom of the net. It was the kind of composed shot that had made DJ one of the Celtics' most dependable players in late-game moments. As the quarter progressed, Danny Ainge looked to involve the Celtics' big man. He dropped the ball into Parrish on the low block, where Parrish calmly turned over and released a smooth short jumper that extended the lead once again. The Sixers kept pushing, and Charles Barkley added a highlight of his own, when Cheeks led a fast break and delivered a perfect bounce pass to him in stride. Barkley exploded to the rim and finished with a powerful two-handed dunk in transition. But when it mattered most, Boston delivered the knockout blows. Dennis Johnson came up with a clutch steal and immediately took two dribbles before firing the ball ahead to Parrish, who stepped into a jumper and nailed it. On the very next possession, Parrish caught the ball in the post again, but this time kicked it out to Johnson, who was wide open at the top of the key. DJ squared up and buried the jumper, putting the game out of the reach for good. Larry Bird finished with 42 points despite playing only 3 quarters. He dominated every phase of the game, scoring from the post, the perimeter, and in transition. His passing, timing, and control gave Boston a rhythm the Sixers couldn't disrupt. Even when the game turned physical, Bird didn't flinch. After a heated exchange with Julius Irving escalated into a fight, both players were ejected, but by the time Bird walked off the court, the Celtics had built a commanding lead. They maintained control in the fourth without him, closing out a strong win over a tough rival. Bird's performance wasn't just efficient, it was overwhelming. He didn't need all 4 quarters to leave his mark. 3 were more than enough.